There's a profound truth that history's greatest spiritual masters and transformational leaders discovered: our errors aren't obstacles to growth. They're the most powerful teachers life can offer. But there's a crucial difference between those who are destroyed by errors and those who are strengthened by them. The difference lies in mastering specific meditative techniques that transform failure into wisdom, pain into compassion, and shame into unshakable inner strength. The Dalai Lama was forced to flee Tibet at 24, losing his country, his people, and his life as he knew it. Instead of becoming bitter or vengeful, he used ancestral meditative techniques to transform this personal tragedy into universal wisdom that inspired millions around the world. Steve Jobs was fired from the very company he created, facing public humiliation and questioning of his competence. Through contemplative practices, he transformed this rejection into fuel to create Pixar and returned to Apple more visionary than ever. Oprah Winfrey faced abuse, poverty, and rejection during childhood and early career. Instead of allowing these traumas to define her negatively, she developed meditative practices that transformed her pain into deep empathy, her vulnerability into powerful authenticity, and her errors into lessons that touched millions of hearts. The difference between these transformational figures and people trapped in cycles of self-flagellation wasn't the absence of errors or traumas. It was mastery of specific meditative protocols that alchemize painful experiences into spiritual gold. But before revealing the exact techniques, I need to show you why 95% of people completely waste the transformative power of errors. The problem isn't the errors themselves, but our unconscious and destructive relationship with them. The first destructive pattern is what Buddhist psychologists call automatic resistance. This happens when our mind immediately rejects, denies, or fights against the reality of the error. This resistance not only unnecessarily multiplies suffering but also completely blocks access to the lessons and wisdom the error contains. Imagine trying to learn swimming by fighting against the water. Resistance makes learning impossible. Similarly, when we resist our errors, we make it impossible to extract the wisdom and growth they naturally contain. Meditation teaches us that what we resist persists, and what we accept transforms. The second destructive pattern is total identification with the error. This happens when we can't separate our essential identity from the error committed. Instead of thinking, "I made an error," we think, "I am an error." This toxic fusion between being and doing destroys self-esteem and completely blocks the capacity for growth. Meditation teaches us to develop what Buddhists call witness mind, the ability to observe our thoughts, emotions, and actions without completely identifying with them. You are not your errors. You are the consciousness that can observe, learn, and grow through them. The third destructive pattern is infinite rumination. This happens when our mind gets trapped in obsessive loops, replaying the error infinitely without extracting any useful wisdom. It's like trying to drive looking only in the rearview mirror. You can't see where you're going and will probably crash into something. Meditation teaches us the difference between conscious reflection and destructive rumination. Conscious reflection extracts lessons and promotes growth. Destructive rumination only amplifies suffering without producing any real benefit. Now that you understand the patterns that prevent transformation, let me reveal the specific meditative techniques that the greatest masters use to alchemize errors into inner strength. The first technique is radical acceptance meditation that Tibetan monks developed over 1,000 years. This practice doesn't mean passive resignation or approval of the error. It means stopping fighting against the reality of what already happened so you can work constructively with it. The practice consists of sitting comfortably, closing your eyes, and bringing to mind the error or failure you want to transform. Instead of trying to change it, deny it, or justify it, you simply observe it with compassionate curiosity. You repeat mentally, "This happened. I accept that this happened. Now I can learn from it." The practical implementation is dedicating 10 minutes daily for a week to practice radical acceptance with a specific error. You'll notice resistance gradually diminishes, and in the space created by acceptance, natural wisdom begins to emerge. The second technique is non-judgmental observation that completely neutralizes self-flagellation and creates space for genuine learning. This practice comes from the Vipassana tradition and teaches you to observe your errors with the same scientific neutrality that a researcher observes a natural phenomenon. The practice consists of observing the error as if you were a scientist studying an interesting phenomenon. How interesting, I made this decision based on this information and beliefs. How interesting, this produced these results. How interesting, now I have new information that can inform future decisions. This perspective shift completely removes destructive emotional charge and transforms the error from a source of suffering into a source of valuable data for future growth. The practical implementation is using the phrase, "how interesting," whenever you notice judgments about your errors. This simple change in internal language creates healthy psychological distance and activates your natural curiosity instead of destructive self-criticism. The third technique is transformation breathing, that literally converts emotional energy from pain into inner power. This practice comes from the Tonglen tradition of Tibetan Buddhism and teaches you to breathe consciously through difficult emotions to transform them. The practice consists of consciously breathing in the pain, shame, or frustration related to the error on the inhalation, allowing these emotions to be fully felt without resistance. On the exhalation, you consciously release compassion, wisdom, and inner strength. You're literally transforming dense emotional energy into refined spiritual energy. The practical implementation is dedicating 5 minutes whenever you feel difficult emotions related to errors to practice transformative breathing. Inhale pain, exhale compassion. Inhale shame, exhale wisdom. Inhale frustration, exhale inner strength. The fourth technique is compassionate dialogue, that transforms the critical inner voice into a wise and loving mentor. This practice teaches you to speak to yourself about errors the same way you would speak to your best friend facing the same situation. The practice consists of identifying how you speak to yourself about errors and consciously replacing critical language with compassionate language. Instead of, "I'm an idiot for doing this," you say, "I'm human and humans make errors. What can I learn from this?" The practical implementation is creating a list of compassionate phrases you can use when making errors. Everyone makes errors, this is part of growth. I can learn from this and do better next time. My errors don't define my worth as a person. The fifth technique is gratitude for errors meditation, that dramatically accelerates the transformation of failures into wisdom. This practice may seem counterintuitive initially, but it's incredibly powerful for recontextualizing errors as disguised gifts. The practice consists of meditating specifically on the benefits, lessons, and growth that resulted from past errors. You consciously cultivate gratitude for errors that taught you humility, for failures that redirected you to better paths, for disappointments that strengthened you. The practical implementation is dedicating weekly time to identify at least 3 specific benefits that resulted from recent errors. This trains your mind to automatically look for transformative value in difficult experiences. The sixth technique is Recalibration Ritual, that creates a sacred protocol for processing errors and extracting their wisdom systematically. This ritual transforms errors from chaotic experiences into structured opportunities for growth. The ritual consists of 5 stages. First, honest recognition of the error without minimization or exaggeration. Second, radical acceptance of the reality of what happened. Third, identification of specific lessons contained in the error. Fourth, commitment to behavioral changes based on these lessons. Fifth, gratitude for the growth the error enabled. The practical implementation is creating your own recalibration ritual that you execute whenever you make a significant error. This transforms errors from traumatic experiences into growth ceremonies. The seventh technique is Universal Compassion Meditation, that connects your errors to the universal human experience, eliminating isolation and shame. This practice recognizes that making errors is a fundamental part of the human condition, not a unique personal failure. The practice consists of meditating on the fact that all human beings make errors, face failures, and experience disappointments. Your errors don't make you different or worse than others, they make you deeply human and connected to the universal experience. The practical implementation is consciously remembering that millions of people have made errors similar to yours and that this shared experience creates connection, not separation. Now I'll show you how to integrate these 7 techniques into a complete transformation system you can use to convert any error into inner strength. In the first week, practice only radical acceptance with a specific error. Dedicate 10 minutes daily to simply accept that the error happened without trying to change or justify it. This foundation of acceptance is fundamental for all other practices. In the second week, add non-judgmental observation. Use the phrase, "how interesting," whenever you think about the error, transforming judgment into scientific curiosity. Combine this with radical acceptance practice. In the third week, incorporate transformation breathing whenever you feel difficult emotions related to the error. Inhale pain, exhale compassion. This adds an energetic dimension to your practice. In the fourth week, implement compassionate dialogue, replacing self-criticism with loving and encouraging language. Speak to yourself as you would speak to your best friend. Continue adding one technique per week until you master all 7. Each technique reinforces the others, creating an integrated system of emotional alchemy. Also use the principle of progressive practice where you start with smaller errors and gradually apply techniques to larger and more significant errors. This builds confidence and competence gradually. Implement the practice of weekly review where you analyze which techniques are working best, which errors have been successfully transformed, and how you can refine your practice. This conscious reflection dramatically accelerates your progress. Remember that the goal isn't to never make errors again, but to develop mastery in the art of transforming them into wisdom and inner strength. Even the greatest spiritual masters continue making errors, but they have tested systems to extract spiritual gold from every experience. True masters understood something most people never discover: errors aren't evidence of failure, they're raw material for wisdom. They're not obstacles to growth, they're catalysts for transformation. They're not reasons for shame, they're opportunities for compassion. Think with me for a moment. What would your life be like if you were never again paralyzed by shame from past errors? What would it be like to wake up every day knowing that any error you make can be transformed into wisdom through meditation? What would it be like to have the unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you can grow through any experience? This isn't an impossible fantasy. It's the natural result of consistently applying meditative techniques that have been tested and refined for thousands of years by history's greatest spiritual masters. If it worked for them achieving enlightenment and wisdom, it can work for you transforming any error into inner strength. The difference between people destroyed by errors and people strengthened by them isn't in the absence of failures. It's in the presence of meditative practices that transform failure into wisdom, pain into compassion, and shame into unshakable inner strength. Comment below which error from your past you'd like to transform using these meditative techniques and which practice you'll try first. I want to know how these ancestral techniques will revolutionize your relationship with errors and unlock the wisdom they contain. And if this content revealed the transformative power of meditation, leave your like and subscribe to the channel because I have much more ancient wisdom to share with you.